Um, Good afternoon. We're going to call to order the Los Osos Groundwater Basin Management Committee meeting. We're going to start off with item 2, roll call. Dan?
Yes, Director Cesena,
Here.
Director Gibson,
Here.
Director Reinecke,
Here.
Chair Zimmer.
Here.
Great, all 4 parties represented.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move to item 3, the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, moving along to item 4, board member comments. Do you have any comments from the board?
Probably hear enough of them today.
Right. So a couple things. We do have one of the board members needs to leave early today, so we're going to try to move the meeting along, and I think the goal is to be out by 3 today, if possible. Okay. So I just wanted to give a heads up on that part of it. Then I did want to bring up a comment from Golden State regarding some UCMR sampling that we've been doing in Los Osos, more of a volunteer state at this point. I think all groundwater, I don't know who's familiar with it, but it is a regulation that is for the primarily the focus right now is the PFAS that we've been hearing about. So we've done some preliminary samples in Los Osos. We have detected in one of our entry points into our system, so coming from our tank, that there is a contaminant. It's called perfluorohexane sulfonic acid, and the abbreviation for that is PFHXS. It's at the notification level. So these are unregulated constituents at these points. We don't have an MCL or a contamination level that really determines that we have to take this source off a line or have a treatment mechanism. They're in the early stages of defining what this MCL. We're going to have a lot more information. Those that aren't familiar with it, it's going to be all across California. All groundwater basins are going to be faced with dealing with it. I'm sure that at some point, some level, everybody's heard about it. We at Golden State have been dealing with it extensively down south. So the goal of the state was to really target areas that they felt were highly contaminated or highly populated, and then move to other areas as they migrate through their testing requirements. So Golden State primarily down south, we've been dealing with it within a number of our systems, pretty familiar with it over the last couple of years, implemented actually some treatment. On the scale of treatment's not as bad as some of the other contaminants. It's more of a filtration with carbon. You target it specifically for this constituent. So right now, the goal is for Golden State, we've reached this notification level. This contaminant PFHXS has a notification level of 3 nanograms per liter, and then an action level of 20 nanograms per level. And our detection was, we've sampled it twice. We did a confirmation sample after the first one. So the first one was 8.8, the second one was 7.3. We're going to continue to monitor this additional sampling. This is such new information for us right now. I felt it was important to bring it before this group because this is what we do, is we manage the groundwater basin. We're interested in it. We want to know what's happening, but literally just got this information last week. We're required to notify. And so this is going to go on the EPA website very soon. I didn't want somebody to pick up the information coming off a meeting like this. I just didn't think that that was fair for me to do. So wanted to bring it out there right now, but I do want to clarify this is new information for us. So right now we're going to continue to analyze the data, the results. We don't even have all the results back from all of our sample points yet. Those are, some of them are we have to resample. Overall, on the scale of things, it's not good to have this in our groundwater. Nobody wants any of this to be in our groundwater, but it's not, compared to what we saw down south, it's better. So we're not at a level of severity that we are in some of the systems down south as far as the contamination level. The treatment for this, as I mentioned, it's fairly straightforward treatment. Filtration, and moving forward, there's going to be a lot more discussion on this. I think every purveyor and every source of supply will need to be sampled at some point moving forward. And I'm not really sure on the dates of that, but I know we have some orders to do the sampling in 2024. As I mentioned earlier, this is more of we want to get ahead of the game and see what we have out there. So all of the purveyors are going to be responsible for sampling this. And I know wastewater has been dealing with some of the sampling requirements. We're just going to this is going to be part of our world as far as utilizing groundwater, and we're going to need to have just open, upfront, honest discussions how we move forward. So I wanted to make that announcement to the group.
Be glad we don't have an airport nearby.
Yes, yes. Like I say, it's definitely better than
It's everywhere.
areas that we've seen in close to airports and things like that. Sure.
Yeah, so my question is, for starters, it's so good to know that you guys are staying ahead of it and that Golden State is being proactive about it. Is there any possibility that we could know maybe location wise in Los Osos, like what area the tank was that you guys?
Yeah, sure. No problem. So that was in our Los Olivos tank, up by our office on Los Olivos. It was, that tank has two sources of supply. So we didn't take analysis from each source of supply. It was more the entry into the system. We wanted to know what was going out to our customers. And so Los Olivos, our South Bay well, that is a direct pumping into the system. That one was non-detect at that point. So, or below the notification level, very low. If it was, I don't think that there was anything found in that one. Our other tanks, those are the two that we haven't received the analysis results yet. So, okay. All right. We're gonna go ahead and open this up to public comment. There's no further questions from the directors. If you have a comment, please come up to the podium. So, yeah, Golden State Water serves water all over California, all throughout California. We serve over 500,000 customers, and predominantly our systems, we have at least 30 water systems down south. So it's more in the easterly portion of Los Angeles, those kind of areas. And like I said, it's pretty much LA area down south. I mean, if there's a specific neighborhood you're asking about, I can probably answer that. I don't know them that well. I can't really list them off my head, but it's LA area. We haven't sampled for Santa Maria yet. Yeah, so that's coming down the road.
Mark, if we could have people, yep, go ahead, Laura.
Yeah, I was going to say we're not supposed to have crosstalk because I cannot hear it. It needs to be a public comment at the podium. And if you'd like to make a public comment and you're online, please raise your hand. Thank you. And if you're in the boardroom, please come up to the podium. Thanks. There's no public comment.
Okay, thank you, Laura.
Good evening or afternoon. My name is Terry Simons. In the context of the sampling that you're doing for this PFHXX, I noticed in the agenda that you seem to be having difficulty getting permission to sample wells that are part of the S&T program. Has that permission issue been resolved? Are they required to do their own sampling? How is that working?
Let's just have all their public comment and then we'll answer it up.
Right, they'll answer that question at the end of public comment.
Okay. And then my next question was further going through the agenda and the agenda.
So we can't go further on the agenda. This is just for the comment.
No, I understand that, but
Okay.
these are questions that are raised by reading the agenda, but are not on your agenda per se.
So this is just for the board member comment So we'll open it up to general public comment later down in the
Oh,
agenda. Yeah.
Okay. It
Sorry.
wasn't clear to me. Thank you.
Sorry, got to follow the format.
Becky McFarland. And I wanted to thank you for giving us that information, being a stockholder and shareholder in Golden State Water's parent company. That concerns me not only for Los Osos, but our whole area. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, that concludes public comment in the board. We'll bring it back to the board of directors.
I can address the comment related to S&T. At this point, S&T has not received any orders to sample. So no, we are not required to yet, but we will once probably after the UCMR. S&T won't fall into the UCMR category because it's too small of a system. So we will probably be sampling once there's an actual MCL assigned to any of the PFAS.
Thank you, Beth. Okay, that concludes item 4. We're going to move on to item 5. On this item, we have a special presentation from the County of San Luis Obispo Planning Department. I believe this is going to be all virtual, right, Dan? This is going to be a virtual. So this is a technical study on the retrofit program and offset program that the county has been working on. We'll let them go ahead and give their presentation and then open it up to questions and comments after that.
It'll just take us a moment to share screens and get them set up.
Okay.
And just a reminder for those at the podium that we do get feedback from cell phone devices in close proximity to the microphones. It seems to have gone away, but we were getting it earlier. Yeah, we're getting it now. I don't know.
Mine's out in the car.
I don't know if iPads would trigger it.
iPads haven't, so it's something else in the room. So we'll bear with it.
Whatever that was, it went away.
You're the one.
Okay, Kylie, ready when you are.
All right, thank you. My name is Kylie Hensley. I'm here today representing the County Department of Planning and Building. With me today is Erin Sinwald, Environmental Coordinator for our department. And I'm going to provide an overview of the Los Osos Water Offset Study. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Sounds great.
All right, thank you. So I will be starting with the background information about the study, followed by an overview of the results, then an overview of the methodology, and then conclude with a summary of recommended potential program changes. So study background information. The study was completed by Madaus Water Management, Inc. at the request of our department and is available at the link shown on this slide. And just a note, this presentation will be posted on our website and the link will be shared with the BMC mailing list after this meeting. And the study was published at the end of June, so recently. The intent of the study was to evaluate the retrofit to build program administered by our department and codified in County Code Title 19. This requires a 2-to-1 water offset for any new development in Los Osos. New development needs to save twice the estimated water use for the new development. Allowed sources of water savings are currently toilet and shower head retrofits outside of the sewer service area, down to the flow rates listed here on this slide, 1.28 gallons per flush for toilets and 2.0 gallons per minute for shower heads, as well as closed washing machine retrofits and hot water recirculation retrofits anywhere in the basin. Do want to note that this program is intended to be a pathway for marginal development to avoid an increase in groundwater production, but it's intended to be an interim measure until groundwater conditions improve, Just for context, the county is engaged in broader discussions, about growth policy, and this study is very focused, and this presentation is intended to provide a summary just of this study. And only 56 certificates have been issued for this program since it was adopted in 2008, less than 4 per year on average. And not all of those certificates have been used to build at this time. So the intent of the study was to update the average annual residential water use estimates and plumbing fixture use rate estimates that inform the amount of water that new development needs to offset, to estimate the remaining water savings potential in the community, accounting for all of the historic efforts to improve water efficiency in the community, and to identify options to increase program reliability given public concern expressed. And just want to note that any changes to the program do require approval by the County Board of Supervisors. So the study is intended to inform our department, and we may bring recommendations to the board based on the findings of the study. The study area is the Los Osos Basin Plan area. So the same area used in the annual reporting documents for the BMC, shown here on this map in blue. The water purveyor areas are shown in shaded areas, Los Osos CSD in green, Golden State in light blue, and S&T in dark blue. And the prohibition zone for on-site wastewater treatment systems, which is now also the service area for the community sewer system, is shown here in green outline, with exception areas where on-site wastewater treatment systems are still allowed in hatch. And this slide here, just for context, shows that there's been a declining trend in groundwater production. This slide shows just the annual estimated volumes pumped by the water purveyors. So it's not including all of the water pumped. It doesn't account for private wells, but this slide shows that for the water purveyor production, it's been an almost 50% decrease in annual production since 2004. And this decline can be attributed to many factors, such as changes in state law, economic conditions, the new sewer coming online, so people having to pay sewer fees, public education campaigns, rebate programs, installation of smart water meters to detect leaks. So there's many factors affecting this trend, and called out here on this slide for the purposes of this study are some county milestones. So in 2008 is when we adopted the retrofit to build program, as I already stated, and we also adopted our department a retrofit on sale program, which requires retrofitting indoor fixture rates to a certain target flow rates when properties are sold. And then when the sewer system came online in 2016, prior to connecting to sewer, all properties were required to retrofit their indoor fixture rates to specified flow rates before they were able to connect to the sewer. And so as a result of those county programs, we have a really robust data set of parcel specific plumbing fixture flow rate data that we were able to share with Mid-House to inform this study. And also called out on this slide is that there was a slight increase in production, and we attribute that in 2020 to the COVID stay-at-home policies that led to an elevated indoor average use rate. And also some more background information for the study. Mid-House created this estimated groundwater use profile, and this is an estimate of total groundwater production for the study area, including both purveyor wells and private wells. And we include this here to show that residential use, shown here in blue, the darker blue being estimated indoor use, the lighter blue being estimated outdoor residential use. The total residential use accounts for almost 50%. It's the majority of the water use profile. So the study focused on estimating remaining water savings potential for residential uses only. We did not look at agriculture, which is the next largest use category. Based on county policies, the source of water offset credits can't come from agricultural water use. And then for the other use categories, such as commercial or irrigation only accounts, We did not look at those, and those saturation analysis may be a good future area of study. And finally, for our background section, I'd like to introduce this concept of end use, water end use used for water planning. This graphic was shared by our consultant, Madaus. Water Management, Inc. And the idea is that we received total production data from each of the purveyors. Thank you so much to the water purveyors for sharing your historical production and consumption data to inform the study and allow us to provide this information, both for our department's use and for hopefully the BMC reporting use in the future. And for the study, as I get into the methodology section later in my presentation, I'll talk you through how we looked at the total consumption provided, the purveyors provided consumption data broken down by single family and multifamily customer class. So we have that already divided. And then we further parse that data down, estimated indoor versus outdoor usage. And then for indoor use, estimated the water use associated with each indoor plumbing fixture category, so toilets, showers, clothes washers, etc. And for outdoor, we assumed the majority of the outdoor uses for landscaping. So when we estimated the water savings potential for the community, we looked at these different end uses to inform the analysis, or Madaus did. All right, now moving into an overview of the results. And again, reminder, I'll get into the method overview after. So the updated average annual residential water use estimates are shown on this table here in units of gallons per day per dwelling unit. So I want to note that it is per dwelling unit, not per person. These are average estimates. So the current program estimate used by the program today is, we assume 150 gallons per day for a single family unit and 75% of that for a multifamily unit. And the results of the study for a single family unit within a water purveyor area, the updated estimate is 128 gallons per day per unit, which is slightly less than the current program estimate. And then we calculated a separate estimate for parcels that self-source their water or that use private wells. And that was a significantly larger volume, 390 gallons per day on average per unit, which is over twice the current program estimate. So that's important to note. And then for multifamily, for both the water purveyor areas and private wells, the total estimated water use was similar to the current program estimate. Moving on to results for the water savings potential estimate, the findings estimated a total residential potential water savings of 118 acre feet per year. The majority of that potential is for indoor water efficiency retrofit, 71% or 84 acre feet per year, and then 29% for outdoor or 34 acre feet per year. This graphic here shows of that 84 acre feet per year potential estimate for indoor, the majority of the indoor water use savings are for properties within the prohibition zone or sewer service area, 80%, with 20% for properties outside of the prohibition zone. This graphic here shows the indoor estimated water savings potential broken down by the water efficiency measures considered in the analysis. The majority of the potential savings is for retrofitting toilets to 1.0 gallons per flush, 50%. 36% of the estimated indoor savings is to retrofit shower heads to 1.5 gallons per minute flow rates. 13% to retrofit clothes washers to an integrated water factor. It's an Energy Star certification of 4 or better. And then 1% was attributed to hot water recirculation system retrofits. For the outdoor estimated 34 acre feet per year water savings potential remaining in the community, this is a broad stroke analysis, so I'll get into the methods in a minute. But the Madaus looked at 3 different water efficiency Measure interventions, spray to drip. So converting irrigation systems from spray to drip accounted for 50% of the estimated savings potential for outdoor use. Turf conversion, so converting turf to more drought tolerant landscaping accounted for 25%. And then finally installing efficient irrigation devices such as rain detection or smart irrigation meters accounted for the remaining 25%. And this graph shows the total estimated water savings potential. A reminder again, this is just looking at residential use by water source. So indoor estimated water savings potential is shown in blue, outdoor is shown in green, and then there's bar graphs for each of the 4 water source areas. So Los Osos CSD, Golden State, S&T, and then self-source or private wells. As you can see, the majority of the estimated remaining water savings potential is within the CSD and Golden State service areas, which makes sense because the majority of existing residences are within those service areas. Okay, moving into an overview of the methods. So again, just quickly revisiting this end use concept to remind you that we received consumption data from each of the water purveyors broken down by single family and multifamily customer class. And then we further broke that into different end uses. So the first step in the study analysis was to estimate the level of saturation of higher efficiency indoor plumbing fixtures basin-wide. So the consultant created a parcel-specific fixture profile by integrating different county data sets that we were able to provide. So first, based on planning and building parcel data, Madaus was able to estimate the number of parcels and existing residences within each water source area and whether or not that was within or outside of the sewer service area. We were also able to provide the land use category for each of those parcels to estimate the customer class, so single family or multifamily water use for each existing residence. Then based on assessor data, we were able to estimate, assessor data included a bedroom bathroom count for existing residences. There were some gaps, so we used averages to fill in, and that's explained in a detailed appendix in the study. And the bedroom bathroom count was used to estimate a fixture count per residence per parcel. We assumed 1 toilet per bathroom, 1 shower head per bathroom, 1 toilet per half bath. And then the assessor data also included a build date. So we were able to compare that with changes in state building code and natural replacement rates to estimate the flow rate of each fixture. And then we layered in our retrofit tracking data that I explained and mentioned on the previous slide, where we had a fixture flow rate, specific fixture flow rates based on our retrofit programs. And we were able to overlay that and to create this really robust saturation analysis. So here on this slide is the results for a single family saturation analysis. The legend is shown here on the right. So at the bottom, there's a category for each indoor plumbing fixture. So for toilet, shower heads, and clothes washers. And then in the bar charts, LOCSD is shown in blue, a dark blue for within the prohibition zone, light blue for outside the prohibition zone, Golden State in green, S&T in purple, and private wells in pink and red. As you can see from this graphic, the majority of toilets are 1.6 gallons per flush, and only 1% of estimated toilets have been retrofitted to 1 gallon per flush. For shower heads, the majority, 73% of the fixtures are estimated to be at 2.0 gallons per minute, which makes sense because it's been the requirements, and only 22% are estimated to have been retrofitted to 1.5 gallons per minute. And for clothes washers, the majority of existing clothes washers were estimated to have already been retrofitted to for an integrated water factor of 4 or better, 62%. This graphic here shows the saturation analysis for multifamily units. The results are similar in that the majority of toilets are at 1.6 gallons per flush. The majority of shower heads are at 2.0 gallons per minute. And the majority of clothes washers, 86%, have already been retrofitted to an integrated water factor of 4 or better. This slide explains the method used to estimate the average annual residential water use estimates. So shown here are the highlighted cells for single family and multifamily within water purveyor areas. So to estimate the total water use, Madaus looked at a 5-year annual average using water purveyor consumption data for 2017 through 2022, excluding 2020 due to elevated values due to COVID, and calculated a weighted average based on the number of accounts and units per purveyor area. And then indoor water use was assumed to be the lowest winter water use for that 5-year period. And then the outdoor was calculated as the total estimated water use minus the indoor estimated water use. For parcels outside the water purveyor areas served by private wells, the indoor water use was assumed to be the same as within water purveyor areas because we don't have any use data from private wells, and that was the best available data. For outdoor water use estimates for private wells, our department actually conducted a satellite imagery analysis measuring estimated landscaping areas for different landscaping types on a parcel specific level for all parcels using private wells in the study area, and calculated an average water use based on that analysis. And then the total was calculated as indoor plus outdoor. Moving on to discussing the method for estimating water savings potential, remaining water savings potential. So for indoor fixtures, for toilet, shower heads, and washer retrofits, Madaus used this general equation. So the water savings per fixture use times the number of fixtures times the fixture use rate times a 70% adjustment factor to get the water savings potential for each fixture category within multifamily and single family, and then add them all up to get the total water savings estimate. So walking through each of these variables step by step, the water savings per fixture use for toilets and shower heads was estimated as the current flow rate minus the target flow rate. So the current flow rates were from the saturation analysis profile, and the target flow rates, the study assumed that toilets would be retrofitted down to 1 gallons per flush, and that shower heads would be retrofitted to 1.5 gallons per minute. For clothes washers, Madaus assumed a 10 gallon per load savings, a conservative assumption based on Energy Star data about standard washing machines. The number of fixtures was estimated from the saturation analysis profile for single family and multifamily units. The fixture use rate was estimated using these assumptions shown here on this slide. There's detailed footnotes in the study. They're included here, but they're based on an industry average of fixture use rates for average residences. So toilets, the average fixture use rate was 5.75 gallons per flushes per person per day. Shower heads, the use rate was 8.7 minute showers occurring at 0.7 times per day per person. And those per person rates were multiplied assuming 2.4 persons per household based on 2020 census data. For Los Osos, the census data is the best available source of data for occupancy rates, and there's just one number provided for the Los Osos census designated place. It's not broken down by single family or multifamily, so that average occupancy rate was applied to both single family and multifamily categories. And then for clothes washing machines, based on Energy Star, EPA national average use rate of 300 loads per year, or 0.82 loads per day. And then the 70% adjustment factor was added to account for a potential error in the number of fixtures and the fixture use rates. So the 70% adjustment factor was determined by comparing the percent savings per fixture use with the percent of total estimated fixture water use saved using that end use concept. So, for example, the percent water savings per fixture use for toilets, say the majority of toilets would be retrofitted from 1.6 to 1 gallons per flush, which is a 37.5% savings. And there's also toilets that are retrofitted from 1.28 to 1 gallon per flush, which is a 22% savings. So a reasonable range based on this fixture replacement is a 22 to 37.5% savings. And then comparing that with the percent of total estimated fixture water use save, Madaus provided this residential indoor end use study. So this is an industry average of residential indoor use. About 24% is estimated to be used for toilets, about 7% for bathroom faucets, etc. For this example, we're looking at toilets. So toilets on average, industry average, use about 24% of indoor residential use per unit. So for each category, Madaus estimated the average estimated fixture water use. So for this example, for toilets, looking at the average toilet water savings per unit divided by the average toilet water use per unit. So based on the parcel specific flow rate saturation analysis profile, that gave the toilet water savings and the number of fixtures targeted. And then comparing that with the averages from the consumption data provided by the purveyors, and then multiplying by that 24 end use assumption, we were able to compare kind of that end use concept to make sure that the estimates based on the parcel specific saturation analysis were reasonable. And based on this comparison, the 70% adjustment factor was decided to be a most reasonable adjuster. And then for hot water recirculation retrofits, because we didn't have the detailed saturation analysis for this measure, a more broad stroke estimate was used. So the average indoor water use per unit multiplied by the percent end use from the table shown on the preceding slides, multiplied by an estimated 20% of hot water use is wasted based on the study cited on the screen. The retrofit was estimated to save 50% of that wasted hot water. And based on Madaus's recommendation, it seemed reasonable that 5% of units could be targeted for this intervention. So that's how that water savings potential was estimated. And then for outdoor landscaping water efficiency measures, there was an estimated savings rate. So each measure was assumed to save a certain percent of irrigation, and the irrigation was assumed to be 83% of average outdoor water use based on the purveyor consumption data. And then the percent of targeted residences shown here is based on a recommendation by Madaus of what would be feasible for the community. So now to summarize the program recommendations. So the recommendations of the study are to update the required water offset for the retrofit to build program for new residences using the updated average annual water use estimates, to update the estimated plumbing fixture daily use rates using the industry standards and census data that is available, to allow additional toilet and shower head retrofits within the prohibition zone to 1 gallon per flush and 1.5 gallons per minute respectively, and to include outdoor water conservation measures with sufficient verification of continued water savings. There was significant notes in the study in the tech memo about just the level of factors that affect outdoor water conservation measures. So some verification measures that could be included in the program to make those water savings from outdoor measures reliable could be pre and post inspections, analysis of consumption data for participating properties, and potentially enforcement actions for properties that exceed a designated water use allocation. And there's discussion of different case studies in the tech memo exploring each of those verification measures in more detail. And then the final recommendation from MDOUS was to monitor water use trends to be able to continue to update the program to reflect changes in consumption and best available data. So that concludes my presentation. Thank you so much for your attention, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Kylie. That was a great presentation, very detailed. A lot of work went into that. Madas, I know he's a reputable consultant to work with on this, so appreciate all the hard work. I know it's been a journey for the county planning to get to this point. Any questions from the directors before we go to public comment?
I want to make sure I understand table 5.3. I think you just kind of went through that one. Assumptions for outdoor water conservation measures. Help me understand what you mean by targeted residences. Are you saying, say under turf conversion, that 10% of the town could be eligible for turf conversion? I mean, I just don't see lawns around here. So I just want to understand that.
Yes, that is accurate. That's what the targeted number of residences means, that, for example, 10% of residences would participate in a turf conversion. And a reminder that the study area includes areas served by private wells also. But there is a higher source of potential error in those outdoor estimates compared to the indoor, because we don't have a really robust data set for baseline outdoor conditions, especially within the purveyor areas. So MDOUS, based on their analysis of the community, just at a high level, recommended that as a reasonable assumption. But if we wanted to shore up those numbers, the department could explore and do have more detail about the existing landscaping for parcels.
Okay, well, you answered my question. I just wanted to make sure I understood that table.
Yeah.
Any others right now? Okay, we'll go ahead and open this up to public comment. We'll take online comment first.
If you'd like to make a public comment and you're online, please raise your hand. Jeff, you just have to unmute yourself.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. My name is Jeff Edwards. And thank you, Kylie, for the presentation. We've been waiting for this offset study for quite a while, and better late than never, as they say. First point I'd like to observe is that since the start of the program, and Kylie pointed this out, 56 certificates have been earned, but only 36 homes have been built. So that's 20 homes that have already performed their conservation, and that's been occurring for year after year after year. That's money in the bank based on the delay. I'd like to ask about or question the end use concept that included bathroom, showers, and toilets and what have you, and then washing machines, but I didn't see kitchen use or kitchen uses in the end use concept analysis. So I'd like some clarification on that. In my view, to focus on the indoor conservation is really where we need to go, or actually stay, because that's what Title 19 is all about today. It doesn't have an outdoor program. So I really think we need to focus on the indoor. The outdoor conservation is kind of a flex tool. Periods of drought, people can reduce their outdoor irrigation. So I'd like this, whatever is ultimately presented to the board, I'd like it to include only indoor. And then as to the saturation analysis, at 70%, I have to question that. There were so many homes that were exempted during the sewer connection phase. I believe the saturation is closer to 50% and not 70%. And that would mean that we have over 6,000 1.6 gallon per flush toilets to retrofit, and we have over 5,000 2.5 gallon per minute shower heads. So what that translates into is a substantially more indoor conservation that is potentially available. Right now, the numbers look like 84 acre feet per year of indoor between all purveyors, 76 acre feet just between LOCS Golden State Water Company. I would respectfully submit we're probably at really 3 times that potential, or over 200 acre feet of savings indoor. I generally agree with the recommendations, except the outdoor conservation is mentioned. And I would encourage staff to seek comments on this as soon as possible, set a deadline for written comments. Let's synthesize the points in the water study. Let's incorporate them into a Board of Supervisors amendment to Title 19 as soon as possible, because clearly our ability to complete this process and create the amendments is going to have implications with the Coastal Commission and their consideration of the Los Osos community plan, if and when they get to that. So on balance, I think it was
Hey, Jeff, you're gonna have to wrap it up, okay?
I'd be happy to. It's a well-written study. I'd urge the county staff to synthesize and get it to the board as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, before the next public comment, it might be useful to frame what we're up to here as the BMC. I'm grateful that folks have looked into this and are making comments. I think the probably the best use of the BMC's time might be to collect those comments, to ask staff to sort them out, respond to any that have specific BMC. But this is a county policy issue, and the county would gratefully entertain a comment letter from the BMC on the matter of this study with any suggestions that they may have, rather than to try to reconcile all these details here today.
Yeah. So will Kylie be collecting these comments then? Is that the?
And if, yes, I'm sure I'll speak for Kylie. If she isn't, I'll gladly collect them and give them to Kylie. So, you know, we can, we'll make sure. Obviously, there is a policy decision for the board of supervisors to make at some point down the line. I don't know exactly when that's going to be. And there will be open public comment there too. I just wanted to make sure the BMC knew that we didn't need to reconcile differing views or opinions here. We can collect and transmit would be great.
Okay, good. Yeah. And I think, you know, it's important to get these comments out in front early so that the county can go through them and respond to them appropriately as they may. You know, as you mentioned, this is county policy and really the county's presentation as a courtesy to us to really understand this. So wanna acknowledge your comment and agree to it. But we do want to have those comments. So,
yeah.
Okay, we're going to continue with comments online, please.
All right, Patrick, you just have to unmute yourself.
Thank you. Patrick McGibney, Chair of Los Osos Sustainability Group. All these possible retrofits should be mandatory and paid for by the remainder of the $5 million that was set aside as required by Condition 5 in the CDP for the Los Osos wastewater program. These water savings should stay within the basin to help increase water reliability and the possibility of a sustainable water basin. I'd like to acknowledge the time and money that have gone into rewriting the Title 19 offset program to build. Unfortunately, it has many of the same flaws the original Title 19 had. For example, the metric for the number of times Los Osos residents wash their laundry every year is used in a formula that calculates how much water is used, how much there is to save, and how many water-saving appliances it'll take to save that much water. The national average was estimated to be between 300 and 400 laundry washes annually for a family of 4. The old Title 19 estimated 392 clothes washers per year, and the new revised metric estimates 300. Several years ago, I questioned the county on this, pointing out that the national average was for a family of 4, but in Los Osos, the average family size is estimated to be 2.4, 40% less. The county responded that 200 was a more realistic figure and that it would be revised. It never has been. The new Title 19 estimate of 300 should be adjusted to 180 washes per year, which is 40% less. The most concerning element of this report is that it is based on assumptions and estimates. Every page seems to be riddled with it is estimated that, or that it is assumed this, as in, quote, assuming irrigation is 83% of the average outdoor water use, end of quote, or, quote, estimates recommended by Mattis Water Management based on industry experience, end of quote. Why is there no hard data posted? Why, after years of compiling this document, is our basin still being subjected to assumptions and estimates? This is why, after 7 years of management, our basin is still in overdraft, why we still have seawater intrusion. I know our supervisor wants to claim otherwise, but his reasoning is also based on assumptions and estimates, such as the now accepted sustainable yield estimate of 2380 acre feet yearly. Estimates and assumptions will not bring our water basin into sustainability. This is why the Coastal Commission will not accept Title 19 as a source of water savings to justify new water use development. This is until the basin is shown to be sustainable. Then this program will be helpful in maintaining that sustainability. According to climatologists, long-term droughts will be in our new norm. We will need Title 19 and programs like this to help ensure water reliability. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Patrick.
All right, Lynette, you just have to unmute yourself.
Hello, Lynette Tornotsky, Los Osos. I used to live in Los Angeles, and what was offered to single-family homes was a device that could be put on the outflow that went into the sewer. So you would have an accurate amount of how much water you used in the house as opposed to what you put on your plants outside. I'm wondering if that sort of a device would ever be offered to us. The homeowner did have to pay for the device and the installation, but we certainly could get a very accurate amount of water that was being used by each household if, you know, we had something like that. So that was my question. Would that ever be offered to us? Thanks.
Thank you, Lynette.
All right, EM, you just have to unmute yourself.
Hi, it's Emily Miggins. I just want to say thanks for the insight and the report. I thought it was a good effort. Is there going to be any summary, perhaps, with best practices? I still think we're lacking on education. I've noticed an uptick in people asking questions online, and certainly seen the CSD's efforts. Maybe my water purveyor is Golden State, so maybe Mark, you could give a kind of an answer to this question. I'm just not seeing the education out there, and I see the lit up board, on the intersection of South Bay Boulevard and LOVR. But, in my past consulting experiences with Science Applications International Corporation for CPUC, 10 years ago we had, and I'm sure still to this day, we had targets that were really public, and how to get the word out there with retailers at public venues, et cetera. So where are we at with doing that education, Los Osos and beyond? And I'd also like to say, again, I thought the flume effort was amazing. We're we're 2 people and 2 dogs at our house, and we've ended all pretty much outdoor watering. And we are down to about 12 gallons a piece per day. So we don't even make it up to 1 unit. But in doing all of these efforts and analysis and looking at our flume, we realized we could probably cut even more water. And I think anyone's capable of doing that. But I think what's disheartening is if we're all doing this and development is still on the agenda without really making sure, I mean, you can retrofit till the cows come home, but if we don't have a sustainable basin, it's what are these efforts worth to our county? I find it really challenging to explain that to people, why they should keep conserving. So if anyone wants to take aim at that, I think an executive summary for the public would be great.
Thank you, Emily.
There's no further public comment online.
Okay, thank you, Lori. We'll go ahead and open public comment to the boardroom. Please come to the podium.
Good afternoon, Terry Simons. I'm actually a resident of Morro Bay, but I have planning clients here in Los Osos. I found this a fascinating study, very deep in detail. The chart that seemed to be ringing my bell the most was right at the beginning of the presentation that fundamentally showed a 50% reduction in production over the last couple of decades. Now, the basin, by the analysis that I've looked at, continues to be an overdraft, but the tremendous reduction in consumption speaks to the demand side. Your body is fundamentally responsible for the supply side. So how this really fits into your actions, I think, is problematic. I think that your efforts are best spent on trying to figure out how to get more water. And I don't think you have a tribe of Indians lined up to do rain dances, but I can tell you categorically, Morro Bay is currently sending 1 million gallons of basically purified water into the ocean every day from the new wastewater treatment plant. And it's going to be years before there'll be a significant program in place to re-inject that water into the Morro Basin. I do not understand why that water is not being transported across Los Osos Valley Road and re-injected into this basin, which is desperately in need. The capacity of your basin is there, as evidenced by the saltwater intrusion. And the only way to push the salt water back is to add a tremendous amount of fresh water into that basin. That you're right now, you're relying on rainwater, but the fresh water that could be available to you is just a few miles away. It's a pipeline away. I do not understand why this body, which is responsible for the production side of water to match the county's regulated demand side, isn't in serious negotiations with Morro Bay to bring that water across to help begin to move the basin back into a sustainable level. That's what I have for thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Lindy Owen from Los Osos. That's a very good point. A lot of planning has not been done correctly, as in the 1 million gallons a day that go up to Broderson for an experiment that we still won't have any idea what kind of results to expect. I kind of expected this kind of a result of a study, which didn't really change it from the prior study. I personally feel the county has a large conflict of interest. They make their money by issuing permits and overseeing tax incomes increasing. And so Los Osos is sort of up against a certain party that would like to see the growth here and is in charge of the studies and a lot of what goes on with the basin management. I just find that disturbing. I would like to ask Mr. Gibson if he could explain why he has been quoted in an article that up in the Paso Basin, he was seriously demanding that they put water meters for usage on their wells. And when we've begged for that for over 8 years here, it's been said that it can't be done. And this whole study is flawed because half of Los Osos on private wells is taking out as much as they want to take. You could take an aerial picture over here and guess, but most of those 10% of lawns, they're over there because they don't pay for their water hardly. They pay for their fuel to pump it up or the electricity. I just, this is kind of just disturbing all the way around to see this come back. The idea that 56 certificates were issued with only 36 homes built. So that's 20 homes. We're not including how much gets used up when we add a guest room or a bedroom I mean, this is the new trend too. In order to get around not building a full-size mansion, we're watching the county push through permits that we don't even see at LOCAC. We're not allowed to see half of the growth that's going on here. So it's a little deceptive all the way around. And I will go ahead and use this study, but I don't think this solves a bit of a problem with knowing the 2-to-1. The idea is that we would be in the same situation after we do that and build the new house. But we don't know if that new house is going to go ahead and say, I've got $5 million. I don't care if I use all the water I want. There is no control over that water until it's excessively grotesque. And then I guess the water purveyor can come in and step up and ask them, put a control over their water. But this is all, should happen, should go smoothly. Right. Thanks.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Becky McFarland, I thank you for the opportunity for public comment. We bring important insight, and because these meetings are recorded, it remains in record and the community may watch it at a later time. It's a public meeting. Public comment should never be made shorter. I know people have to be somewhere else, but maybe the meetings need to be scheduled so that people can be here to listen to the community whose water supply we're talking about. I want to thank Kylie for your thorough presentation. I'm glad to see that Title 19 now requires some outdoor water saving measures. I'd like to see rainwater catchment, subsidies for gutters on every single house in this town. During the flood up there at Vista Court, a county worker was there volunteering and says, why are these homes not guttered? It also helps in that. I'd like to see, and I don't know, is there turf removal or cash for grass program for the entire town? We may not see front lawns, but many people have back lawns. And I could be wrong, but guest houses and home offices that have been built and in the process of being built are not required to do Title 19 offsets. These buildings contain up to 2 bedrooms, a wet bar, and a bathroom. I think there's some water use happening there. This and other similar new buildings are under construction right now in the prohibition zone. As for money in the bank on certificates, all we have to do is look at the seawater intrusion that continued for years after the original Title 19 program started. I don't know how many acre feet were lost to seawater intrusion, but it's significant. And I do like that idea of getting Morro Bay's wastewater. It's a much better idea than trying to bring in state water from areas like where Paradise burned down, and that watershed is not getting the water that it used to this year and maybe next year, but it's just not going to happen. Thank you very much. And again, public comment is very important.
Thank you, Becky.
Richard Margetson. The first iteration of this took 3.5 years of public comment to get corrected at the Board of Supervisors. James Caruso came to a board meeting, acknowledged that there were mistakes in the report, and they were corrected. Let's not have that happen again. 2 things I'm going to bring up today, because I only have 3 minutes. Assumptions. there are ways of actually verifying, because in order for a program to be effective, it has to be verifiable. They're using the assumption that 2.4 from the census is the average household. There's ways to determine what the household size is in the multifamily category. The mobile home parks, for example, are all 55 and older parks. Maximum capacity in a mobile home in this community is 2 people, unless you have a disabled child that's living with you. By law, they have to be allowed. Morro Shores and Daisy Hill, all the parks have their own inner park phone books. I got Daisy Hills and Morro Shores. Morro Shores average is 1.51. Daisy Hills is 1.52. Sea Oaks is mostly single wides. So I'm sure it's in that same category. And Sunny Oaks is comparable to Morro Shores. That's 530 homes in the multifamily category. Most of the multifamily on Santa Ynez, very small units. There's very few 3-bedroom apartments. There's very few, that are going to house 5, 6 people. Where that comes into play is when you're figuring out what the savings are and giving credit numbers. If it's 1.6 compared to 2.4, you're giving credit that isn't been earned. Second point. I got a whole bunch of stuff. I wish that we had more public comment. Real quick. On page 16, the chart that talks about indoor, outdoor consumption, the multifamily category says 58% is indoor, 42 is outdoor, but in residential, it's 72 outdoor, 28. 72 indoor, 28 outdoor. Most of the multifamily properties in this community have very little outdoor landscaping. Most of the apartment complexes on Santa Isabel don't have anything. Most of the mobile home park properties have little plots of flowers out front or on the side, and I ran out of time. Verifiable. There are ways to make sure that instead of estimates in here, that you actually have accurate numbers. There's other parts of this that can be verified.
Thank you, Richard.
Hello, Alan Godley. I just heard about this last night, so this is basically off the top of my head. I lived up in Monterey for the last 15 years. I was going to get a place here about 20 years ago, and when you started the sewer debacle and all that, but I lived right in Pajaro where the water intrusion was really coming in gangbusters, and it came in to, just this side of the 101, and now it's, I'm not entirely positive, but I think it's a good mile or 2 inland. I know it's up in a couple of those valleys where I live. I am very concerned about that here. I faced my own mortality 5 times in the last 5 years, 2 chemo rounds and 2 heart surgeries, and nobody can give me a real straight answer, but I would venture to say it's probably glyphosate or pesticide. So, when we're sticking a straw down at the bottom of this bowl out here and drawing up all these heavy metals and salts and pesticides and the forever chemicals, I breed tropical fish. These are the fish I've lost last few months. A bunch of guppies, these are $1,000 sitting out here. These are your kids. Okay, these are the little, they talk about blue babies, the nitrate level is so high. Yeah, so this is what we should be really talking about, is our health really of any concern? to us, or are we here to make wealthy people wealthier? My situation is, I breed fish, so I'm very conservative in my water use. I use, sink water to flush toilets with. Very little watering outside, and I live in a place where, not a lot of lawn at all. But, we need to get serious about this. I monitor fish all over the world and the droughts that affect them in Africa. And I'm actually in the business, and I deal with fish in about 15 states. So there's what we're doing here. I mean, just watch the news, the weather's not going to get any better. We're going down a road that every year is going to get worse and worse. I did a TV show on climate change 2 weeks before Al Gore's movie ever showed in San Luis, and what it did in the fear and denial was everybody got fired in that show but me. But I had done my homework. I did 6 months of study, and I put, what facts I knew in front of people. Nobody did anything about that at that time. But, it's not about twiddly-dee and twiddly-dumber. It's about getting real. And I'll leave you with this. I would like to see not just meters on ranches, but how about meters on vacation rentals? An actual allotment of gallonage per person that they cannot exceed, and also hotels. I know we don't have as many here as Morrow does, but these people come out of these heat waves and they're taking 3 or 4 or 5 showers a day. I've had girlfriends like that, not well, she's a past girlfriend. Anyway, that's all I got. Thanks.
Thank you, Alan. Any others? I think that concludes our public comment. Just my own comment on public comment. We're not intending to dismiss the public comment at all. Really channel those comments in a focused direction where the county can decipher how they use these comments on this specific item. So I do appreciate everybody coming out here, taking time out of their day and providing this level of insight and care into the community of Los Osos. So just wanted to clarify that we're conscious of timing to get through an agenda, but we are not intending to dismiss your comments or effort and input into the process.
I think I saw Chuck. I want to just wrap up and reiterate, but Chuck, if you had something.
One thing that is very clear is that verification is going to be the key to all of this. I'm not going to quote Ronald Reagan, but it's very true that verification is going to be the key. And so I think I heard right up front that the detailed information about water use for the 56 retrofit certifications that have been issued was provided, Madeus. And I'm wondering if that information could be provided to the public so that we see that this kind of verification, this actual certification is valid, it's going on, and that there is a way, because once the building permit is issued, it's almost too late to monitor and verify. We need some assurance. And I just wonder if that would help provide it. If we could see that, the water use at these properties actually followed the trends that we thought.
Well, just along that line, I just wonder if we don't have that opportunity on these ones, could we have that opportunity on futures that they sign some type of a waiver to allow that their water use to be?
It gets into, I know there's personal data that you need to protect and that kind of thing, but water use is really what we're after, not shaming.
Did you have any other issues?
No,
because that's a valid question. So we heard public comment on a variety of topics, but let's bring it back to what's in front of us today, which was this committee receiving the information of this technical study. and provided the opportunity for the public to comment, which is great, and the committee to comment back to the county if the committee would like to. My reading of the findings of this report are that retrofit to build does work. It's been verified that there's opportunity to do it and that there's water savings that come of it. And what I read in the report is that we need to go back and make sure that the parameters, the amount of water saving for a particular action is accurate, and the verification. But what I read also, and so there may be some tweaks to the exact number of gallons that we attribute to a particular retrofit, but in general, this works. The second part about verification, what I read was that Madaus concluded that we were getting the water savings more or less that we expected. So that's another good thing about the program that's in place. And that they encouraged further attention to verification as a means. I think there is an absolute reasonable question as to the confidentiality of individual account data. But I think that what we find in this report is that in the aggregate, they're finding the necessary. So I would encourage that members of the public who have, again, comments that are specific to the Title 19 retrofit to build, or submit those to the county. And if you have a problem finding exactly where to do that, you're welcome to submit them to my office and we'll make sure they're there. Similarly, members of the committee or the committee as a whole, or the three purveyors of the committee wish to submit comments to the county, I'd encourage that as well. And again, we have at some point in the future an item coming to check in and use the results of this particular study. And I think that's the appropriate time to debate the question. But bottom line, this works. We can adjust it to make it more certain and perhaps more effective, and we'll move forward. So beyond that, I don't think, I don't see that there's much that that we need to do today, except again, reiterate the desire to receive comments.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I just have a few things. I think I definitely want to reiterate what has been said, I think, by several people, and that is, the EPA estimates are useful maybe for different parts of the US, but Los Osos we know it's more conservative. So I just want to make sure that when that data is being used as an assumption, that we are considering maybe Los Osos may not be that average that you would see in the Midwest or somewhere else in the US. Another thing I want to kind of address, one of the comments was about the purveyor's role and responsibility in all of this. And S&T has advanced meters, so we can see every 15 minutes what usage is happening. We have an excellent metering system. So we can let our customers know, in the same day that their hose is left on in the backyard. And that has saved an immense amount of water. So I just encourage all the purveyors to consider that as an option for monitoring and for water savings. And the other question I had, I guess this is something that'll probably come up for the county, is how is the outdoor use actually going to be incorporated into this? And is that going to be, I guess, represented in the percentage that is assumed to be used outdoor here? And I don't know that the outdoor assumptions are based on data from what I was seeing. I wasn't seeing real data. I was seeing the aerial studies, which I think can be useful, but they could also be flawed. And the last comment I have is a goal or a switching over to a 1 gallon per flush, is that actually a reasonable estimate? I mean, do people want to have a toilet that is a 1 gallon flush? And most of the toilets that are out there, you can actually adjust that. So you can get a 1 gallon per flush toilet that you can make more. So would that kind of thing be monitored? And that's it.
let me just speak if I could on the matter. Again, what the report as I was reading it was talking about is required, that the standard is now 1.28. If, you know, if a choice is made to go lower. Title 19 is the building permit, building code title of the, so it kicks in only when an applicant comes and says, I need a building permit. And that, and is that building permit involved in something that's going to change, increase water use? If it is, then we need to do retrofit to build. You know, I don't remember off the top of my head the exact conditions of how outdoor retrofitting is credited toward the necessary amount of water savings to justify the new water using building. But I think that's again a point of the report is to figure out a system by which that could happen. To me, the role of the purveyors is also on the other side of that, could be a regulatory role about, you know, how much outdoor landscaping, we could work with the county on that. How much outdoor use do we want? How do we want to drive it from a regulatory side? How much do we want to drive it from an incentive side? But all the questions you ask, that's about the amount credited per unit, whether it's appropriate for Los Osos. I would again submit those. I don't know if individual purveyors want to submit to the county, but as you know, as a request for verification that we are using the right numbers, perfectly reasonable thing to do.
All right. I one comment on the metering and AMI. So that is a great tool. You know, one thing, the existing purveyors and their meter systems, we don't have a clean slate to start with. So that cost of changing them out and installing them is quite significant. And so you have to do a cost analysis and do you get your bang for your buck there? And hence one of the reasons why we went so far with our flume program, and really we were giving those away at a time. So door to door, sent operators around just to knock to see if we could get an interest. So we do see that value in putting that information in the customer's hand. How do we implement that? For Golden State, I know we're doing a pilot program in one of our systems down south to do that cost analysis and see if we can't implement that in some fashion down the road. Maybe it's over time we do certain amounts of them or something like that. But to come in and do the whole system, I just, that would be a tough call to happen right out of the gates. Yeah, a lot on conservation. I know Emily's comment about public venues and such. I think we do need to do that. We've talked about that as purveyors, and really, you know, you keep that message out there and keep it alive and keep it out front. Targeting kids at the dinner table is one of the most effective means I've seen. And so would definitely open up that opportunity along with, you know, these types of programs. So, yeah. Okay. County planning, thank you for the presentation and all the hard work. We're gonna move on to item 6, our consent agenda. Dan, do you want to take that for us?
Yeah, this meeting consent agenda is pretty standard meeting minutes from the previous minute and our invoice register. Happy to answer any questions there may be.
Yeah, and I have one question. If I could pull out the invoice registry just to talk about our budget. I don't know if we actually need to do it. It was a line item in our budget pertaining to our annual report and some leftover funding in our budget. Yeah, maybe we'll just make comment on that. Could you just look into the dollar amount that's left in our 2023 budget versus the contracted amount with Cleath on our annual report? Because the invoice shows that he's been paid in full, but our budget still shows that there's a surplus of $9,000. And so in a future, maybe come back next time with just a budget update or something.
Yeah, I'll look into that. That
Okay.
seems to be an issue with that. That doesn't make sense.
Thank you. we have a motion? Or actually, we got to go to public comment, sorry. We're going to open item 6, the consent agenda up to public comment. We'll take online comments first.
If you'd like to make a public comment, please raise your hand. There's no public comment online.
Thank you. Public comment in the room? I see none in the room.
I'll move approval of consent.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Approval of, do we need a roll call for that, Dan?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion passes.
Thank you. You want to move that out of, okay. So we have a request to move item 9A before public comment, item 7. I think we all have to approve that move, chairman's discretion. Okay, I see no reason why not to do that at this time. I mean, we can definitely do that.
Be quick.
Yeah. All right, so we're gonna move out of order and take 9A in front of item 7. It's the action item for program C modification. And this is an agreement that we for the program C well, that we take that and continue and find the value of that program third well. We've deferred that in the past, focused our concentration on other areas. Now we're talking about making that part of the program C, or at least bringing back the importance of that. I mean, one thing to note, this is part of our basin plan. It's been agreed on early on, and the basis of the basin plan is to really move east and up, right? Our water production, upper aquifer, and moving our wells to the east. So this would be in line with program C modifications. Dan, do you want to take and give us a little more background on that?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Zimmer. And I'll probably try to move through this relatively quickly. We covered most of this item at the last meeting before getting to the very end where we lost connection to the Zoom. Yeah, just program C, as Director Zimmer or Chair Zimmer mentioned, looks to shift pumping from the western area to the central area, and increase the sustainable yield of the basin by pumping further away from the seawater intrusion front. Identified in the basin plan in this figure is the area in green. That was the general proposed location for the program C wells envisioned within the basin plan. And there have been one program C well has been completed for construction. That's the Golden State well on Los Olivos. The CSD is under construction of the second program C well at its Bay Oaks location. The well itself has been drilled, but the CSD is in the process of equipping that well and connecting it to its water system. And then, as was mentioned, basically based on the previous methodology for calculating the sustainable yield and the increased sustainable yield associated with that, the BMC back in 2018 chose to defer the need for a third program C well, because based on the calculations at that time, it wasn't anticipated that that would be needed to meet the basin yield metric target of 80. And really, so what we're here today is to bring forth, and there's a technical memo included in the agenda packet, that with the BMC's update of the sustainable yield calculation methodology and the updated sustainable yield calculation adopted in 2021 that lowered the sustainable yield estimate from 2,760 to 2,380, potentially warrants re-inclusion or removing the deferral of that third program C well. And there's estimates of how much additional sustainable yield those wells will provide, included in the technical memorandum. And then this is a graph that tries to show graphically how the installation of these additional Program C wells would help the BMC achieve its basin yield metric target of 80, or which is 20% of the sustainable yield. And so these graphs are just try to walk you through them a little bit here. So the large blue columns represent production, and then the green lines represent the sustainable yield. In the light green line at the top, as you can see, it's currently 2,380. And then the darker green line represents the 20% of the sustainable yield, or the production target. 80%. Thank you. Yeah. Or 20% reduction. Yes. And so as you can see, right now, under current conditions on the left, production exceeds the target. With the installation of well number 1 and the expansion of the Broderson Mound. The second column shows that the production is approaching the target. With the installation of 2 wells, the target increases further, and then with 3 wells, there's a bit of a buffer between production and the target, indicating that it not only has the basin yield metric of 80 been reached, it has been exceeded. However, even though with the second well, it's predicted that the basin yield metric could be reached, it's acknowledged that there is a certain amount of uncertainty within future basin conditions. How much will the Broderson Mound develop? What will future climatic patterns, how will they impact rainfall and sustainable yield? And so the recommendation would be to remove the deferral of the third well, as was originally proposed in the basin plan, and have the Program C include 3 wells as envisioned by the BMC.
Thank you. Bring it back to the board for any questions, comments?
And just to confirm, if I could, Mr. Heimel, the re-inclusion of this well, which I think is a good idea for the reasons that you note in the technical memo notes, does not approve the construction of a well. That does not identify the site for the well. It simply indicates that this is a project that we will work toward, and one of the purveyors will take on in the future, with all the necessary public process of actually deciding exactly where and how deep and all the rest of that to drill.
Yes, that is correct. And then I would also add, approving the recommended action here today does not approve the increase in sustainable yield estimates that we think these additional wells would provide. That is an action that must be taken separately with the approval of the sustainable yield for the basin. And so really this is just to change the description of how the third well is described in the annual report and the executive director's status of basin plan implementation table, to remove a statement that said was previously deferred and now lists it as part of the scope for future implementation of Program C.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering, what are the numbers? Where is the data that is giving us this urgency? I'm curious what we're seeing that now makes this deferred well so important now.
I mean,
so what has changed? So the BMC, when they made the decision to defer the third well, was back in 2018, when the estimated sustainable yield was 2,760 acre feet per year. What has changed is that in 2021, the BMC adopted a new methodology for calculating the sustainable yield that significantly reduced the sustainable yield estimate from 2,760 down to 2,380. And so with that new information and new estimate of sustainable yield, it indicates that additional work needs to be done to meet, to meet the basin yield metric targets. And additional in construction of additional program C wells is what was outlined in the basin plan to achieve those targets.
Okay, yeah, I see the significant increase in the estimated sustainable yield as well as the yield metric. So just, S&T, we're pretty conservative. We only use about 30 acre feet a year. So when I see these increases, I'm just, it's to us at S&T, that's a significant amount. So that was kind of my question is why, where is that water needed right now and why? What's going on in our basin that is now?
It's the, I think as Dan said, it's the failure to meet the objective. So in the far left bar, the blue part that's above the green line, that's the impetus right there. We're producing more than 80% of we're like at 82 or 83 or 84 or something like that. And maybe we should color that yellow. The part that's above the metric should be yellow to show it. But as we install new facilities, our sustainable yield goes up, and thus we start making it. And this looks to be necessary to do that.
Okay. So the program C-well that we're trying to put in, where our assumption is it would jump 100, just about 100 acre feet, just in one well. So that's significant. So what I would like to see in more details, maybe the methodology that was used to do that, because I know we are trying to move our pumping from the west, but have we done a detailed analysis of the western side of the basin? And can we see that in numbers? And then also see, now that well one is drilled, can we see that data to show, the 100 acre feet that is now added to our sustainable yield?
Yeah, so I mean, we have detailed descriptions of the methodology that was utilized to calculate the sustainable yield and the scenarios, both in the October 21st, 2021 agenda packet when the sustainable yield was changed. And then I would say additionally in the tech memo that was included with this agenda item is a description of the modeling scenarios that were done to develop these updated calculations for the anticipated increase in sustainable yield that the additional program C wells would provide. And that's been kind of that has been the methodology outside of the changes to the different criteria that we included in 2021 for all these sustainable yield calculations, is utilizing the model and the results from the model to inform future BMC implementation initiatives.
Thank you, Dan. And so to follow on with that, with the model, should it, I mean, it seems like it would be more reasonable to wait until we have the transient model completed to make a decision about this, because we would have better data. And, we pump, our chloride level hasn't budged, and we solely pump from the western side. So I think there's more information out there that would be helpful in the transient model.
To me, I think it's an and proposition. Putting this back in program C acknowledges the failure to meet targets right now. It's one of our options. It puts it in the basin management plan as an option for us to pursue. And I think signals our intention to do what we have to do. The transient model I see as a different line of effort, separate here, that will give us a refined sense of the overall safe yield of the basin. I don't know that it's going to change the safe yield of the basin. What it's going to do is allow us to see in a better time frame exactly what the effects are going to be and how that's going to work over time. Whereas now we have to do a bunch of calculations and frankly a bunch of estimates to calculate out to the steady state. I don't see that the transient model is fundamentally going to change the nature of sustainable yield. Like I say, this, to me, if this is in program C, it points to something we can do. And if the transit, and I would think that the timing of having the transient model up and running would come before we even get serious about the possibility of actually constructing a third program C well. And we can test the cost benefit of that at that point. So I think it fits nicely, and it keeps us out ahead of the curve in trying to figure out what we need to do to change the management of the basin.
Yeah. Chuck, I don't know if you have a comment. I'll go last. I'll let you.
I'm in favor of removing the deferral. I just think that we've talked about it, and it was in the program at one time, and I kind of got a feeling that we really didn't want to go in that neighborhood. Also, was kind of some of the thinking, and so we've tried other wells, other locations, and we still need this. It is my feeling, and again, we have the information from the transient model. We're not making decisions about moving ahead. We're not picking a location. We got a long ways to go before this well is online.
Yeah, and I agree with that, and appreciate this conversation. You know, one of the, I guess, confusing parts about this is Golden State announcing that we're actively pursuing a well for our water supply, and some of the discussions we've had here with the Cabrillo Estates and nitrates. We have Rosina well out there. It has, nitrate and a liner physical condition of that well, plus its impact on seawater intrusion. There's a whole host of reasons that Golden State's developing why we need an additional source of supply, knowing that typically, I don't think I've ever installed a well in less than 5 years at best. So, the district, you guys were phenomenally fast tracking your well, and here we're still, in that range. So I anticipate this being a journey that we go on down the road. And if we don't start it now, when we really need it, we're going to still have to go down that journey is not going to be bypassed. So having it in line with our basin plan is important, that we agree on that. For me, I was part of the basin plan in 2006 talking about these, and there was a lot of discussion and a lot of input on the basin and how shifting east and up was really, our core focus. And so how that really got deferred, and that was part of our more recent dealings in yield and input. And so, but knowing the basin and pumping out of this basin for a long time, and others have done it longer than we know we have to get to the easterly portion. Whether Golden State's well can complement a program C well or not, I'm hopeful it can, because that just strengthens our support. Can we do it in a united way that all the purveyors benefit for it? I think that's we got to work that out, because that was part of the plan too, so I'm not saying that this is solely a Golden State well that's going to be solely a program C well. I'm hoping that it aligns with our basin plan objectives. We work to it together as purveyors and implement these kind of projects, because as Supervisor Gibson said, that this is a project that we have in our hands as purveyors. Some of these other projects we don't have that much control over, but this is definitely one that we in line with purveyors and we can implement. So kind of my thought there on it. Okay, no further board discussion. We're going to open this up to public comment. We'll take public comment on online first, please, Laura.
If you'd like to make a public comment, please raise your hand. Patrick, you just have to unmute yourself.
Thank you. Well, as you know, the stipulated judgment back in 2015 called for 24,000 acre feet a year, and your methodology that you used brought it up to 2,760 right away. And evidently you changed it again using a different methodology, because that amount was too much in the first place. The sustainable yield was all based on estimates and programs that weren't in place and everything else. But we have to realize that our basin is just that. It is a basin with water in it. And you put a straw in one place and you start bringing it out, There's only so much water that is in there. So moving your wells westward will give you a better yield. It is not going to give you a higher sustainable yield. And in the basin plan, it does say there are two ways to balance the sustainable yield and the basin yield metric. One way is to increase the sustainable yield, and the other way is to decrease production. You haven't decreased production at all. You've only increased sustainable yield to be able to match the 80% production that we are required to have for the buffer in there. So I just want you to be aware of what we're really doing here, and we need to really start thinking about more conservation than how we're going to be able to increase the amount of water we're able to pump, because there's only so much in there right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick.
There's no further public comment online.
Yep. We will open it up to board comment in the boardroom. Sorry.
Becky McFarland. I have questions, and it is about sustainable yield and changing that. I mean, we're not sustainable right now. So how do you increase the sustainable yield out of something that's not sustainable right now? I mean, I'm not great at numbers, but it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And I know we don't want to talk about where this well might be, but I know people over in the neighborhood where it might be, and they are concerned. They're concerned that this, when we talked about signals, that this signals development, it signals maybe danger to their private wells because of how deep this might be. They're concerned that it, in the past, there was an offer of property being given to put this well on in exchange for building homes elsewhere in town on an unsustainable basin. So those are things that need to come out now, not years down the road, because these people shouldn't have to worry about their private wells being sucked out. I work in agriculture. My cousins work in agriculture. They've all seen people's wells get messed up by big wells going in, maybe not for public, but for pistachios or whatever. So yeah, it is concerning. And the signaling that, yay, let's build more in Los Osos before we've dealt with the seawater intrusion. We're still going to be pulling water out of the same basin. If it's in the upper aquifer, is that not only going to, isn't that just going to pull seawater in up there? Are we working towards a straight line instead of that zigzag one like this? So we get it all at the same level? That's my question. And I wish we had a lot more water. We need more water. People would love to be able to water their yards and make things less flammable. I mean, we're looking at Maui right now, 2 ways out. We're surrounded by dry stuff around here, level 4 and 5 fire hazard. So I'm all for more water, but where's it coming from? Maybe Morro Bay. I hope so. Thank you.
Thank you, Becky.
Harry Simons, once again. As I mentioned earlier, I have clients in the Los Osos area. I have one client in particular that is a large agricultural interest that is outside of the adjudicated area, but inside the Los Osos Basin. So technically that water is basin water. He's made overtures several times to members of your group to provide water to the district. We have projects that we're looking at to catch and retain about 1,000 acre-feet a year of stormwater on this ranch. We get no interest because it seems like there's genuinely no interest in bringing more water into the basin. It's almost as if you're fighting an ever diminishing return through conservation, but not really looking at your options to find water. I think, and this is probably a horrible example, but LA wouldn't exist today had they not aggressively pursued finding water to allow the development of Los Angeles. Again, a horrible example. Nobody here wants this to be Los Angeles. But as a practical matter, the existing infrastructure and the number of legal lots, developable lots that exist in Los Osos makes it a primary target area for a tremendous amount of opportunity for low and moderate income housing, which everybody else also says they want to see. But you can't do it if you can't provide the water. So this is a demand side question for the county. Why aren't we moving to make sure, and I know that the local coastal plan gives emphasis on development of low and moderate income housing. But again, it's wonderful to give an emphasis to that. But if you're not allowing other mechanisms to bring water into the basin, and this water that I'm talking about technically exists in the basin, it's just a matter of relocating it and capturing it, because Los Osos Valley drains. This last winter, we had 6 feet of water running over the top of the road that essentially acts as a small dam going down Los Osos Valley. And it was horrific to watch all this water just running into the ocean when there was no way to divert it into the basin. And I think those are the kinds of creative things that, as the purveyors, you really need to look at enhancing. I know you talk about these little catchments and stuff to catch stormwater, but this is a significant catchment that we could develop easily if we had any interest from your group. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry.
Lindy and Los Osos, again, there are creative ideas, and we seem to be pretty much stuck on just putting more straws down inland. But again, there are people in those areas that if they lose their water supply, that was totally unfair to take their water away or risk their water so that we could put more houses here. And again, tell me how a house increases water supply. A new home. Tell me how a mansion with people who have no idea what it is like to run out of water or to be without water, they have enough money to pay for it. Tell me how that increases our sustainability here. I asked Rob Miller, I probably asked him like 6 times. He finally jokingly said, oh, I know what she's going to ask again. My question was always, can you tell me how many years with the current usage of water that is going on in our basin, about how many years we have left? And he just said that we don't know that. We can't know that. So again, when we talk sustainability, we don't know. We still don't have all, even if we're the most studied basin in all of this county, we still don't know the truth. So again, we can put a well in, we can maybe upset one neighborhood and tell them we're going through with it anyway. If we continue getting saltwater intrusion, I just read a very interesting article out of Water Efficiency, which is a good magazine, talking about seawater intrusion and ocean rise. It's 2.5 feet, folks. It's putting a lot of pressure as it comes in. It's putting pressure on the water. It's pushing it back because it's bigger. So I urge us to go with caution, and planning a well is one thing, but looking at some other alternatives is really a good idea. The creek discharge, we never did that. Getting some of the ag to buy some of our not clean enough, too many solids in it, treated water. It's right there. We've got a cemetery. It's right there. Instead, we spend the most money we can spend shipping it all the way across town to an experiment that is 7 years in, and we have no idea when we're going to see any real results, if we even see them. So thanks.
Thank you, Lindy. We have no further comment in the boardroom. Bring it back to the board.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, again, focus on the item before us here. We've heard comment on a number of different options and opportunities, all of which in their time have been and deserve further consideration. But the item before us today is for this committee to vote on re-including the third Program C well in Program C, take off the deferral. I like the double negative on that. And let me only point out that as we have indicated, there's a long road to getting a permit for this, and the interaction of that well with wells around it is fundamentally to be considered in the siting of that well and the permitting of that well, and that will be a condition of mitigating any adverse impacts. So just as an interest of moving it along, I would move staff's recommendation to remove the deferral and re-include the third program C well.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay. Dan, we roll call?
Sure. Director Susena,
Yes.
Director Gibson.
Yes.
Director Reinecke.
I think for S&T, we can't approve it with the, where it's interrelated with the change in sustainable yield. I think removing the deferral is okay, but it appears that it's an automatic increase in sustainable yield. Oh, okay, just in the graph. So I think they're maybe separate items. Is that possible?
Or maybe we just clarify the motion a bit to, I mean, this is just.
Not adjust,
this
does
has-
not adjust the
Does
sustainable.
not adjust the sustainable yield in any way.
And in that we would approve if that was the motion.
That is the motion.
Yes.
And
Okay.
make sure the second agrees with
Yeah.
that, which I think he does.
Yes.
Okay. Director Reinecke,
Yes.
Chair Zimmer.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes.
Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Okay.
Apologize.
Okay. All right, thank you, Director Gibb. Okay, we're gonna go back to our agenda. Item 7, public comments not appearing on the agenda.
If you'd like to make a public comment and you're online, please raise your hand. All right, Jeff, you just have to unmute yourself.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members. My name is Jeff Edwards, and in the interest of time, I'll trail my public comments for items not on the agenda, specifically the graph that I presented to staff. I'll carry that to the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
All right, Patrick, you just have to unmute yourself.
Thank you. Patrick McGibney, Chair Los Osos Sustainability Group. A few years back, the 3 water purveyors wrote a weak cautionary letter to the county expressing joint concern of our overdrafted water basin as the ADU ordinance was being drafted. The concern was that ADUs would create an intensification of water use to an already overdrafted water basin. Recently, the county has determined that Los Osos groundwater basin is no longer in overdraft because its estimated sustainable yield of 2380 acre feet a year is greater than the amount of water it actually produces, 2,000 acre feet yearly. This argument was part of the defense that one of our developers used in trying to fight an appeal before the Coastal Commission last week for a new spec home he was wanting to build. The Coastal Commission disagreed and found substantial issue because of an expansion of water use, stating the LCP requires CDP denial if there is a lack of adequate and sustainable water supply, which they rightfully believe there is not. The Coastal Commission is not looking at your projections, assumptions, or estimates for sustainability, but actually they need hard data, conclusive, indisputable evidence that the basin is sustainable. That you do not have yet, nor can you produce. It is time for this committee to stand up in defense of our community's only water supply and write a strong letter to both the county and the Coastal Commission supporting a cessation of county proposed CDPs that would add to the intensification of water use, and request that the county stop issuing ministerial permits that do the same thing, such as in additional bedrooms or guest houses. It is time for this committee to start protecting what water we have left and start producing some hard data to show beyond a doubt how much that actually is. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick.
All right, Emily, you just have to unmute yourself.
Hi, I just want to say, can we get the emails of everyone? I've looked online and it says to give comments to Dan Heimel. I'd like to share the Superior Court's decision. We will be going forward as Los Osans for good governance with our lawsuit. Judge Coates ruled in favor against the county today to let our lawsuit go forward on guest houses in Los Osos. So anyone would like to receive a copy of that on the panel there, let me know. Be happy to share that with you. How do I get your emails? Thanks.
Thank you, Emily.
There's no further public comment online.
Okay, thank you. We'll bring it back to the board. Any- Oh, sorry. Well, take it to the room. Public comments in the boardroom.
Becky McFarland, once again, it's that room word. Just
That's
board
the room, yeah. No, I was thinking about the emails. I thought our emails were on the agenda at some point here, but maybe they're
I
not.
get more time.
Yeah. Okay, you can have more time.
I wanted to also to talk about overdraft and this definition that some are using and some are not. It almost is starting to sound like it's what is the definition of is, we know that old statement. So I brought a little poster because I'm the teacher person and I always have to have a visual aid. We have overdraft, overdrafting, and overdrafted. The county is saying that we are no longer in overdraft because according to DWR definition, overdraft occurs where the annual amount of groundwater extraction exceeds the long-term average supply of the water to the basin. The rest of that paragraph says effects of overdraft can include seawater intrusion, land subsidence, groundwater depletion, and/or chronic lowering of groundwater levels. So while we may not, they're saying we're not in overdraft, we're not overdrafting is basically what they're saying, because we're not using more there. But we're already overdrafted. So how can you say, I guess we're not overdrafting what's left, but we have those effects of overdraft in our basin. And if you look at the pictures from the basin management annual reports, you can see it. It's a big salmon colored wedge coming in almost a mile to Palisades Avenue there. So I argue we are in overdraft. We are critically overdrafted. I wrote to the California Department of Water Resources and shared my concerns, and here's what they told me. Dear Rebecca, thank you for contacting the California Department of Water Resources, sharing your concerns about the Los Osos groundwater basin regarding status of the basin. DWR does not plan on evaluating critical conditions of overdraft until 2027. We hope this information is helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Becky.
Lindion, I don't have much more to say than what I've already said. I love Los Osos. I came here, I was told by the top realtor in town, currently still the top realtor. There was so much water here that didn't ever have to worry about any water shortage because I had gone to Paso and asked people up there because I was beginning to hear a little bit. That was 32 years ago, folks. And that's why our water reduction looks so good. It's because we were wasting water. We created it. The county put 1,240 homes in a 5-year period, and they increased the nitrates. They and certainly increased the water draw. They are part of what has been the cause of the situation we're in now. And I find it very angering, and I'm just completely shocked that they continue with the idea that more houses means that we have a longer water supply future. It's not true, folks. You know, we've been it's been a joke over the 32 years when you look back and look at their concern for Los Osos. All they want is the money, the revenue, the tax base. And I think it's really time to stand up to these ADUs, all this little nickel dime. And ultimately, where is any kind of workforce housing here? People are being forced out of this community. If you want somebody to come clean your house or do your yard, you're going to be paying double, and they're going to be polluting so they can come from some outlying area to get here. We completely, the county again, looks at luxury homes only. There is absolutely no thought about affordable housing. So even if we were to build some, I don't want to see any more mansions until we get enough houses for the working people. Thank you.
Thank you, Lindy.
Richard Margetson, Chair. First, I appreciate you, the way you pushed back a little bit on Mr. Gibson, that public comment is important. It needs to be listened to. Every time one of these things has come before the county, it's like, this is etched in stone, this is correct, there's no, staff is not wrong. And it takes years to get things corrected and adjusted. You and I go back all the way to the school board meeting that was, you remember. Anyway, where the county tried to pull a fast one. I'm hoping that collectively you will weigh in on that, but at the very least, I hope all three purveyors will weigh in on this report today. There are ways to get from assumptions to verifiable information that can be relied on. I didn't have enough time in my 3 minutes. So I'm not going to go into it now because it's not that issue. But it took a long time to get the first one corrected. But there's other things over the years that the county has put in plans that, oh, yeah, we think this is going to work and this will move us forward. Something that hasn't been talked about for years, egg exchange. Remember trying to get the farmers to sign on to these contracts and running the lines over on the other side of Los Osos Valley Road? The hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars that were expended for what are they providing now? 3 acre feet a year from the wastewater project, 3.7 acre feet a year. It's not even the cost benefit isn't even there. You've got to weigh in. It's your basin. It's not Bruce's basin. It's not the county's basin. It's your basin. And if these things aren't correct, it will have an impact down the road. But thanks for sticking up for the community today.
Thank you, Richard. Okay. No further comment in the boardroom. Bring it back to the board. Comments on public comment. I mean, I reiterate what I said about the passion of Los Osos and the knowledge of Los Osos folks here. I've been here for a while and I know you guys have been here longer. And so we do appreciate that contribution and the effort out there. Some of these, we can't solve it all at once. Working with multiple agencies has its challenges and it has its benefits. We diversify our input, and I think each one of our agencies here brings to the table a quality and helps with that diversified approach. So how do we get there? I think we keep doing the best we can every day and keep these public comments that come before us responding to them. So it's heard on my end, and I know the other purveyors are hearing it too. So I'm really not going to go into each one of them because it was a common message here. I don't know if any of the other board members have comment on that.
I think the solutions are coming from a lot of different directions. Conservation, a new well, transient model, greater monitoring. I like the list of accomplishments over the past couple of years, and I'm pretty confident that we're going to resolve the sustainability of this basin. And I appreciate everyone's time that comes in here and brings things because it's been proven that public comment can change things. It changes reports. It focuses staff's attention maybe on things that they weren't expert on or just overlooked. So it's all good. This is a big day, though. This is a big report. We've been waiting for this, and I look forward to putting some comments together, either as a group or individually as purveyors. I think that we need to do that. But this was a good presentation today.
So maybe that comments and how to respond back could be handled at the staff level and maybe some kind of consensus there as far as whether it's a group comment or individual purveyors, I think. Does that sound reasonable?
Yes, it's always best if the staff can really accomplish the goals and get us to where we need to go without a whole lot of extra meetings, input. Yeah.
And I think, ultimately that would come before the board though. So we'd get the public comment.
Yeah, we're
on it,
gonna, yeah.
Okay. All right, sounds good. We're gonna close public comment at this time. Executive Director's Report is next on our agenda, item 8. Turn it over to Dan.
Thank you, Chair Zimmer. Yeah, I'll try to keep this brief, but do want to highlight some exciting movement we've had on BMC initiatives this calendar year. And so I'll just jump into that. Just again, orientation for the readers of the Executive Director's Report. If you just want to focus on the new information, look for the underlined sections. We keep a lot of lack of a better term, older information in there for reference around specific items or history, but try to highlight the new information, the updates since the last meeting or the last Executive Director's Report with underlines in the report. So jumping into it, the Los Osos Basin Well Database, we continue to move closer to completion of that project. As mentioned before, there was and we talked about it earlier, there's a number of confidential pieces of information in the original database that needed to be reviewed and redacted to allow that to move forward. So the consultant team is working on that. Exciting progress on improving the basin monitoring program. So as the board knows, one of our key initiatives for 2023 was the construction of a new monitoring well, a new skyline monitoring well. And so the update on that program is that on July 27th, the bid package was released for the construction of that well. And so the CSD along with the BMC have obtained all the permits and necessary approvals to put that project out to bid. Bids are due August 24th, and we're excited and nervous to open those bids and move forward with construction of a new monitoring well. For those of you that are new to the BMC, this is a key location in the basin that the BMC has identified that could benefit from a new monitoring well. It would be a dedicated monitoring well. The well we currently use in this portion of the basin is a production well, and so it's a little harder to get representative data from the lower aquifer, and so this would be a brand new well without those associated issues. So more to come at our next meeting. And then the significant initiative that the BMC has undertaken this year is the development of a transient model through the completion of a water recycling funding program study. And so as the BMC knows, the contracts have been awarded both for the hydrogeologists to develop that model, the engineering team to support the alternatives analysis, and then also the peer review consultant, a separate hydrogeologist, to participate in the development of the model to provide insight and oversight of that process. The transient model will be a critical tool for the Los Osos Basin Management Committee and our ability to evaluate anticipated future conditions. And then, kind of speaking to a number of the things that we heard in public comment, it really will also be a tool to evaluate other water resource management strategies. I think the focus of that tool initially will be looking at different recycled water opportunities, because that's the grant that we received to move that project forward. So that's the direct nexus. But there will also be a piece where we look at non-recycled water supplemental supply opportunities. And I'm excited to have that new tool set available to allow us to really evaluate other ways to improve the sustainability of the basin. And Program C we covered, and then there's a relatively significant update under the Los Osos Habitat Conservation Plan. And I'm not an expert in this arena, but the update that I received from County Planning and Building that on August 2nd, 2023, the community-wide habitat conservation plan was submitted to U.S. Fish and Wildlife for review and approval. The Fish and Wildlife will be reviewing the HCP and making a determination on whether to issue permits for potential impacts to Moro shoulder-bound snail, Moro Bay kangaroo rat, Moro manzanita, and Indian knob mountain elm species to the county. The county will, in coming months, will be taking an item to the Board of Supervisors to ask for a general fund loan to begin the implementation of that program through land acquisition and habitat restoration for the benefit of those species. And then if approved, this would allow the planning department to accrue HCP credits that can be issued for certificates of inclusion to mitigate infrastructure and development project habitat impacts. So that's something that has been in the works for a while, and I did reach a recent milestone. And then finally, in our update on status of basin plan and infrastructure projects, I think we talked about it in the Program C item, but really the Los Osos CSD continues to make progress towards the completion of the second Program C well. And that well is anticipated to come online sometime in 2024. So that concludes my executive director report. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Dan. Any questions?
Yeah, I just have a general comment and maybe more of an observation, but if we're putting in these monitoring wells and, I'm glad that Golden State Water is sampling for things like PFAS. There are some, I guess, upcoming constituents that we'll probably be detecting throughout the basin, not just in the western side, but probably all over. And so I just encourage the BMC to really think about that as we start putting in these monitoring wells, knowing that there are other things that are coming down the pike that we need to, we're going to have to deal with it. If we have to put in GAC treatment on any of these wells, it's going to be a major project and could take many, many years. So just knowing that it's there and being aware of it now, I just encourage BMC to be proactive.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that discussion, opening things up today, because that's on everybody's mind. We're going to be hearing a lot more, a lot more. It's just starting.
Yeah. Dan, I have a couple of questions on our monitoring well project, and we kind of touched on this in our last meeting. I see that we're going to get the bids back on the 24th. That's days away. But is there any items we can, I don't want to wait. I'm worried about our budget and completing this project within our time frame of our budget. So I don't really have an action or suggestion or anything. I just want to make us all aware of that time is going, the years go, the rest of this year is going to go quick. So I don't know if there's something we can do now that authorizes this to move forward, or if we have a special meeting or something to, is it really, is that going to come to what is the next step? I guess, let me back up. What is the next step do we need a special meeting to authorize any movement? Cause I'd hate to sit here for another 3 weeks sitting idle based on our decision to move forward.
Yeah, I think in the previous approvals for that monitoring well, we didn't include any sort of authorizations that I think would allow us to award a contract. Well, I'd have to look at that because it's the CSD is the contracting agency, and I believe the CSD has contract award authority. And so, I mean, the BMC approved moving forward with it. Then again, it's utilizing BMC funding. So, I would think maybe potentially if bids come in below the estimate, that maybe we could pursue that. If they came in above, I would definitely want to bring it back to the BMC for their approval. I think we could have a special meeting to do that relatively quickly. And because I agree, the clock is ticking and there's still a number of steps to be taken. And then in terms of funding, a couple of comments. I mean, one of the things that we've been doing is really kind of deferring other initiatives for consideration for funding this year, previously approved initiatives, but just to preserve the maximum amount of funding flexibility that we have to construct this well within this year's budget. And then we're also pursuing strategies for how the BMC both receives the funding from the parties and then, pays for its consultant services and other projects and initiatives that would improve the flexibility year over year. So, but yeah, really making every effort to get this project done this year with the approved calendar year 2023 funding.
Yeah, that's good. So we may have an opportunity to carry over we wouldn't have a hard line like we do today. Yeah,
That's what we're working on. Yes.
Okay, that's helpful. And then regarding the habitat conservation plan, I think the county was looking at one time for projects. Golden State's going through its 3-year analysis of projects right now. And if there are things that are on the list, I know we talked about that at one point, maybe a couple of years now. If there's anything that we can do to help facilitate that, I mean, we'd be willing to do that.
Yeah, what we've heard from the county is that if there are infrastructure projects envisioned, by the BMC or the BMC parties, the sooner they know about those, the better they can evaluate whether those can be incorporated into their habitat conservation program or reserved capacity for within their habitat conservation program. Yeah. So good to look ahead and think about what projects may be coming down the pipeline.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
I have one follow-on question. So was there a timeline given on how long it might take to approve the HCP?
I believe there is a timeline. I'm not confident enough of my knowledge of what that timeline is. Good question for county planning if they're still on the line. But yeah.
Okay. I don't think they're still on the line. We'll go ahead and open it to public comment online first, please.
If you'd like to make a public comment, please raise your hand. There's no public comment online.
Thank you. We'll bring it back for public comment in the boardroom.
Hi, Terry Simons again. As much as I speak engineering and planningese, I still am concerned when I hear discussions about the habitat conservation plan generating a mechanism to provide certificates of this, that, and the other thing. My experience with this, and it's fairly long, 50+ years, my sense of things is that that's another mechanism to generate a fee structure for everybody, or just new developers or purveyors, or whatever. I'd appreciate any information that you, as a board, obviously they're talking about impacts generated by public utilities development, infrastructure development. Do you know whether there's an anticipation of the county taking this? I would have saved this for Bruce, but taking this initiative forward to charge a new round of fees for development to participate in this habitat certificate program. Any information would be useful. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Any additional comment?
Becky McFarland once again. I wanted to comment on something that wasn't spoken today, but that is in the report and was in the one that at the last meeting I attended, where it states that Los Osos is using 38 gallons per person per day indoors. I don't think that that's an accurate number, and here's some reason why. And I made you an ugly chart on the back of the other one. Is CSD put out their numbers, and I really appreciate that we get those numbers from CSD. Thank you, Ron. For June 2023, their total use is 67.6 gallons per person per day. That's up from last year. The CSD says it's 25% outdoor use. We heard today another 28% or somewhere around there. By those means, indoor use would be 50.7 gallons per person, or 12.7 gallons more per person per day than is stated in this report. So we know that number comes from sewered homes flushing their toilets and the water going to the sewer plant, the recycled water plant. And but a third of the town is not sewered. And a lot of those homes are a lot bigger than the ones in CSD area. So a third of the town. So how do we really know? In addition, there's many homes that run their laundry water into their yards. The landlord next door was running his laundry water into the gutter until 2 years ago. And that's happening all over town. So there's indoor use that you're not counting, because a lot of people have been using it for watering their lawns that are in the backyard. So it's not going in there. And I believe that the number should be changed, because it doesn't reflect the reality of indoor use over the whole town. I don't know how you can even average it if you're only, I don't know the exact number for CSD, what percent of water users are on CSD, but I think that number doesn't reflect reality. Thank you.
Thank you, Becky. No other public comment in the room. We'll bring it back to the board.
I did have one more thing. So in the report, it mentions the lower aquifer nitrate contamination, and it states that it's impacting the S&T well, which is true, but I think it's a good idea probably to add in the Golden State well, because that one's also significantly impacted by nitrate.
Okay. Dan, if you want to comment on any of those ones at your leisure.
Yeah, a couple of things. Yeah, good catch there, Director Reinecke. I think it was probably referencing specifically that study, but I think we should expand it. It's not just S&T, it's not just S&T and Gold State, but the CSD also has lower aquifer wells being impacted by nitrate. So we can update that portion of the executive director's report accordingly. There was a question about the HCP program, and again, I qualify this, it's not my area, but I do believe that it wouldn't just be for infrastructure projects, it would be for new development projects that would be looking to obtain credits as well, that would be contributing to that program. And then the questions about the 38 gallons per person per day, I think it would probably be helpful to have, we get that number from county utilities and their folks at the wastewater agency, to have them provide a description of the methodology that they're utilizing to calculate that number. I don't know that it's going to change, but it'd just be helpful that we all have a common understanding of how they're calculating that number and what portions of the community of Los Osos it is representing. So I can ask for that.
All right, sounds good. Thank you, Dan. Okay, that concludes item 8, our executive director's report. Last item on the agenda is the adjournment. There's no other comments. We'll call the meeting to adjourn. Thanks. No.